Today I will paint a turkey. For this tutorial today I am using gouache paint, but you could also use acrylic or tempera paint. I have watercolor paper taped down, and as you can see I am using blue and brown to make kind of an oval. It's a little bit off-centered, slightly to the right and slightly to the bottom of the paper. This is going to be the body of my turkey. So if yours is in a little bit of a different place or a little bit bigger or smaller than mine, that is totally fine. I'm just dipping my brush back and forth between blue and brown to try to get a nice dark oval. It's kind of an egg shape. I like to do egg shapes a lot when working on birds. Right now it looks kind of like a big bluish brownish rock. Next, I'm going to add a line right next to it. It's a vertical line that is about the same height as my big bluish brownish rock. And then it's going to curve down like a J and connect to the side. And I'm going to make it the connection a little bit wider on the top and the bottom to give it kind of a better base to connect. So now it kind of looks like a teapot. I'm going to add a little bit of a circle or an egg shape again on the top part of the J to make the head of the turkey. So head, neck, and body, basic shapes. Next, I'm going to take a brown and start adding in some of the turkey feathers. I can start almost straight up off of the back part of the body, and then I'm going to fan it out a little bit on the top so that it's a little bit wider on the top than it is on the bottom. And you can really make your feathers as thin or as wide as you would like. I'm going pretty wide with mine. I'm going to make another one right next to it. Notice it goes right off the side of the paper. And then I will continue to do this until the back of the turkey is filled. Now, if you haven't noticed already, I am working a tiny bit faster. I did speed up my video just a little bit to kind of keep things moving. So if you need to hit that pause button to catch up, please feel free to do so. All right, I'm continuing to add them. Notice they're getting smaller and smaller as I get towards the head. And then I'm also going to make some that go straight off the side of my picture as well. Almost down to the bottom. All right. Now I'm going to leave the turkey for now and start filling in the background. If you need to, you can even move to a larger brush. I'm just going to start with various fall colors, anything that might look nice behind the turkey. I'm trying to keep my background colors maybe a little bit lighter for now, so since my turkey is so dark, so that my turkey doesn't get lost in the background. So I'm using variations of yellow, I'll add a little bit of brown, I'll add a little bit of green, some orange, pretty much any colors that you might see in the fall time. And I'm trying not to make them look like anything right now. I'm just trying to kind of put some different colors into the background so that it's not white anymore. So you can kind of pick and choose whatever colors you'd like. You can kind of do brush strokes in any which way. I will probably go in and fill in some of this again later. I'll go over it again later. So, I mean, if it's not perfect, that's okay too. But I'm just trying to kind of go in with some different colors, some orange, some green, some brown, anything that reminds me of fall, and kind of fill it in around and behind the turkey. And I can go right over my tape line so I don't have to be too careful on my edges. Notice that my turkey does not have a beak right now, and that's totally fine. I'm just painting right over the spot where the turkey's beak would be. I am trying to be a little bit careful next to the body and next to the feathers so that I'm kind of going around those parts, but otherwise just kind of filling in. So if you have certain fall colors that you really love, you can put those in. If you want to just make it all one color, that's totally fine too. I could just have like a bright yellow background or something, and that would work too. But I'm just kind of using a variety of colors and then just trying to be careful right next to my turkey so that I don't mess up the lovely outline or silhouette kind of that I've got going right now. So just paint, 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 lots of different directions. I'm just using this kind of little flat brush and kind of working my way around my turkey. Adding in a little bit more green up here, a little bit of orange to kind of warm it up a bit. Lots of different brush strokes going lots of different directions. And then after I completely fill this background, I'm going to give my painting just a little bit of time to dry. And you don't have to, but sometimes it makes it easy to layer on top, especially if you're using gouache like I am, to kind of let the layers dry a little bit before you move on to the next. So now that I've got kind of my whole background filled in, and I'm kind of liking it, just kind of blending in some of the things. I'll bring some of the green down here to help unify my picture. I can add maybe a little bit of dark down here on the bottom. But once I'm done kind of playing around with the various background colors and shades, then I will go back to my turkey and try to get a little bit more detail in there. So scribble a little bit more down here. And got that all nice and painted in around my turkey. At this point, I want to add a wing to my turkey, and I'm going to make mine pretty big. It starts with a curved line on the body that is going to go off to the right side, and it kind of goes down to the ground. So just a nice big fat wing. I'm going to paint it in with brown. I'm going to keep it pretty dark and just kind of add some feathery brush strokes towards the outside edges to give it that feathery vibe. Now, to help a little bit with just defining some of the shapes of my turkey, I'm using a dark blue, and I just wanted to kind of go in between some of the feathers and maybe around the turkey's body, a little bit under the neck, just to kind of define some of these areas. So I'll go a little bit above the wing here on both sides. To the bottom of the neck with some blue, a little bit above the back of the turkey, kind of around that oval shape with some blue. And then my turkey also doesn't have a beak yet, so I'm going to use the same blue for now and just go right up by the face of the turkey here and put a beak kind of going down towards the ground here. You could put your beak any direction though that you would like. You are the artist. All right, now I am ready to start adding some highlights. And this is kind of what really helps the turkey come to life. So I'm going to start off with some yellow, like a creamy yellow. Sometimes yellow doesn't show up very well on dark colors, so if you add a little bit of white to it, that can really help. And I'm starting at the very top of my feathers and just kind of making some little brush strokes like that to make them kind of pop forward, come to life. I'm also going to add some horizontal lines below the top just to give a little bit of extra detail to my feathers here on the top. And if your paint for some reason is not showing up enough on the dark, you can always go back over this later. I'm going to use the same color on my wing that I just drew, and you may have to let it dry a little bit. I'm going to just kind of dive in, but it might pull up a little bit of my brown, and that's okay. I'm just going to kind of think about the direction that the feathers would be going and then just draw some feathery brush strokes that kind of go in that direction. So for me, it's kind of down to the right, almost like a diagonal. Just kind of adding a little bit of highlight there. All right, I think I'm liking how that's looking. I'm going to let that be for now and move over to the body of the turkey. I'll start with the head. And like I said, I'm just going to use some highlights. So I'm starting off with a really light blue and kind of going around where I think the eye should be. And then I'm going to work my way kind of down my head. And if I leave a little bit of the dark blue showing, it's not a big deal because it just kind of makes it a little bit more interesting. So I'm trying not to cover up the entire head, but think about just kind of the direction that the feathers would grow. I'm going to kind of curve my lines, especially as I move up to the back here, to make it look like there's feathers growing on the turkey with this light blue color. And I'm just kind of making these curved dashes all the way to the back of the bird, or the body part of the bird. Notice that I'm leaving a little bit of space between them so that you can still see kind of the darks, and that way that gives it a little bit more depth. I'm also going to dip in some red and add the little gobbler part of the turkey that's hanging down, and I'll let that dry too. All right, everything is dry. I gave it a minute, and now I am going to go over some of my highlights again because they got a little bit dark as they were drying. And so I just want to kind of give them a little bit of an extra coat of paint in places just to help them really pop. So you can see just going over some of these blues again is making them a little bit brighter. And you know, if you had anything that kind of mixed in or blended in that made it a little bit darker, this kind of gives the opportunity for it to come back to life, to kind of pop forward. I am still trying to preserve some of my darks though. If you leave those darks in between the light blues, then again, that gives it depth. I'm going to do the same thing on the tail. So just kind of go over some of my yellow with a creamy yellow-white mixture so that it's nice and bright. I'm also going to add some lines kind of coming down on the side of the feathers a little bit too, just to help define those shapes a little bit more, and just really trying to punch the light all across the top. I'm going to do the same thing on those horizontal lines that are farther down on the feathers. I can even make them a little bit wider if I want, just to really make sure that I'm getting a nice bright pop of light on these turkey feathers. And then I'll do the same thing on the turkey's wing too. But I thought maybe of adding some gold before I do that on the back here, just as another like layer of fun. Might look nice too. So I just dipped into some, it's like yellow ochre, so like a more golden color, and added those in. And then now I'm going to do the same highlights on the turkey's wing. So just anything to kind of brighten things up, to make things stand out, pop, give a little bit more detail. I'm just kind of making this up as I go, so it's not, you know, super official or anything. I'm also going to add a little bit of color to the beak. I'm just using a little bit of yellow orange mixture. And then I thought maybe of adding some of that color, you know, in the turkey too. So usually when I add a color one place in my painting, I try to find other places that I can add it. That helps unify your piece of artwork. And so unity really just helps everything come together to make a nice picture. So since I used orange on the beak, I thought I would add little hints of orange in other places too. All right, I'm brightening up the red here too on the top just a little bit so that you can see that a little bit better because it was super dark as well. All right, I'm liking the turkey, and now I want to add a little bit more to the background. And we were talking about unity before, and the background is pretty dark. So I thought, man, maybe if I add some of these light colors, like I did on the turkey, it will help unify the background to the turkey as well. So these are some of the same yellows that I used on the turkey. And I'm just adding little dots to make it feel like it's a fall tree that's kind of floating above, with some branches hanging down. And maybe we even have a couple fall leaves on the ground that have already fallen down by the bottom of the turkey, so I could throw those in as well. I can also take some little brown lines that could be good for branches. So I'm just going to pull some little branches kind of coming down and connecting nearby some of these leaves. So I have some overlapping, I have some just kind of coming behind the leaves, just to kind of help indicate that there's a tree here. Not too fancy. I also thought it might be good to have a little shadow under the turkey, so I'm just adding kind of some more of that bluish brown underneath to kind of help define where my turkey's hanging out here. A little shadow underneath. It's super dark right now, so I may kind of think of a way to maybe blend it out a little bit so it's not so dark. I can do that maybe by making like a brown in the ground nearby so that it's not as big of a contrast and isn't taking away from my turkey excitement. And then I'll throw a couple more of those leaves again on the ground in front. All right, time for the big reveal. I'm removing my tape by pulling it away from my painting so that I don't rip my painting at all, and have, of course, painted a beautiful turkey masterpiece. I hope you had fun watching or painting or both with me today. Please make sure you hit that like button and subscribe down below. I'd love to share more fun art tutorials with you. And yeah, happy painting!